Oh my god, it wasn't. So there's an idiosyncrasy with how the YouTube streaming starts is if you are not looking at the page when it does that, it won't actually start. Even if it shows the little button that says you're live, if it's still loading and you aren't looking right at the page, it's not in focus, it doesn't always start. And it looked like it started, but it didn't. This explains why everybody's coming through widescreen format today. That's unfortunate. Not that people are coming through widescreen, it's just that people aren't able to find the tall format. Womp womp. All right, all of our spawn points are changed into spawn points now. That's gonna break some stuff. But in our spawner logic, now spawners have a positioner chain, but it's not quite right. Like, we don't need to initialize the positioner. It's not part of the chain, I should say. Let's create a pool for that. All right. Thanks for swinging through barbed wire, and thanks for letting me know. Just do inherit node. It's empty. Doesn't need a class name. It doesn't need a variety of... No, it does. Like all of them, it needs a variety of pools because every individual implementation of an entity or similar could be a different type of thing. Like, we have to have pools. We have to ask them, what kind are you? Because each individual implementation of an entity, each template, could actually be a different class type. And if it is, we need to handle that accordingly. Okay, which means every positioner could be a different class type. So entity pool, I think, is a good basis for our spawn point pool. Hello there, dead team. Sorry for not getting the tall form up in time. Or in a timely fashion, or at all, however you want to look at it. Fixing all the things. Spawn point. Yet. Welcome back. A lot of live streams have really different vibes there, Dead. Really do. I prefer a more laid back feel. Even if we're playing a horror game, you know? Hey there, Copperpot. Chicken tenders. The the I don't want to admit I'm having chicken nuggets of frozen foods. Though I will say some chicken tenders are actually strips of discernible meat. And it uses spawn point pool. Oop. Okay. So now we have the concept of spawn points. Entities need a spawn point. So they have an array of positioners. Like so. Hey there, Nina. Day is going well. Day is going well. We're making progress. So when we're setting the template in an entity, we need to make sure template dot spawn point. So then when we spawn them, we create the positioner chain. You were running low, huh? Wait. Create the entity. In entity, when we initialize it, That's interesting. So this is potentially another performance hit that we were taking here is when we create the positioner chain. Oh, no. Okay, we're good. Positioner pool. Great. Good, good. On point. On point pool dot create. Okay, so we create our own instance of the spawn point that's in the template. We always have to make sure to do that. I still think positioner chain here. No, that's part of the... Yeah. Whenever we're appending the positioners to use, we create new ones. Okay. Okay. So whenever we spawn them, we have a position to spawn at. Okay, get spawn position here. So instead, we're going to say spawn point dot get spawn position. It does not care about a location. All of them are going to get the same position unless it's a randomizer. So random position on screen. Oh. We could just get the new entity position here. Yeah. We pass in 0 to it. Position is set in when it's fixed. Is if we get a random position, we're going to spawn however many we should spawn in a sequence for should continue loop. But what if we have a burst fire? What if we've applied a burst fire to a spawn at random position? Do we spawn 3 in a burst each at a random position, or do we spawn at a particular random position 1, 2, 3? Is equal to vector 2, 0. Hey there, clowns. How you doing? Game is moving along. We're making some adjustments to spawn logic. In setting up the catalog, I realized that spawn points are part of positioners. They were, but that would mean that if I get a random positioner, I could get a spawn point, and for the player, that's meaningless. Like, we don't want, say, the Vampire Survivor's lightning bolt to spawn on the player all the time. And if the player were to get a power-up, they would level up, and one of their choices was spawn on player. That doesn't feel impactful, because only one of those can really be active at a time. Copper, I have 5 cats, 2 of which are visible. Okay, so we have a current spawn position. And we have a point where we say start spawning. Start spawning is the reset point. So it's equal to spawn point get spawn position. We do that there. Did I break it? Oh, wait. Yeah, I totally broke it. We're going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to fix that. Be right back. And we're back. Okay. So now we need to make sure that all the entities have a spawn point. Why are you broken? That's a nice thing there, fan. All of the values should be there for this. There. Okay. Okay. So now in positioners, we no longer have a spawn on position because that's invalid. Instead, we need to go into our templates. Now these templates should now be spawn points. Yep. So these should be valid entries here. So we're going to go spawn on spawner. Yep. Then for weapon homing mouse, we say spawn on player. And then for the player, we say spawn at 0. What's your question? We press play. And it explodes. Okay, okay. Type. Hello, Sherbet. How does it move? If positioners size is greater than 0, then we have our chain, but we need to make sure that whenever we reference it, what produces it? Generally, temperature differences. So, like, it's cool over top of the ocean usually. You can get banks of heat near like edges of mountains and similar. Those changes in temperature can create up and down drafts because, it'll heat the air and it'll rise up, or it'll cool the air and it'll fall down. That kind of thing. That can create airflow. I think the rotation of the planet is one of them. You have a lot of combinations of things. But temperature variation is a big one. All of these places where positioner chain is going to be empty. I've been through a variety of education there, Nina. Though nowadays, there's a lot of this stuff that you can pick up online too. Okay, if we have no positioner chain, positioner chain tells us how we should spawn. But if we don't have one, it's just, sure, spawn one. The interval is up. Different learning patterns work for different folks. There are folks that especially thrived when the whole school at home thing happened, for the incident. And there are folks that have real difficulties being sat at a desk in a classroom. Okay, so we've introduced the idea that the positioner chain could be empty. We're going to say you have to have a spawn point. That seems pretty solid. But you don't have to have a positioner chain. I have played Among Us, Nina. Among Us is personally one of those games that you need to play with like minded friends. I have been in circumstances where you have people that are just of a different personality type, even if friends, and it doesn't work out. I have been in circumstances where it is a bunch of randos, essentially, and it gets really uncomfortable. Like, I don't like the idea of playing games like Among Us where everybody is just shouting over top of everybody else. You can learn stuff from games. It is possible. Not all games teach you highly applicable things. Minecraft can teach creativity. It can also teach. It can also reinforce existing social norms amongst the group of people playing. It can. Uh, it can still be in situations where people do not learn to be creative. They just mimic what they see. So I saw this streamer do this thing. I do the exact same thing. Hurrah! I'm like that streamer. Um, Among Us can teach deductive reasoning. It can also teach, again, that reinforcement of social norms within a group, that shouting over top of each other concept that I mentioned. Shooters can teach strategic thinking, well, tactical thinking. They can help you build things like reflexes, or they can show you how to be a jerk online. Just like any activity, reading books can do that kind of thing. Just chatting can do that kind of thing. All of these are potentially interactions either with media or people. Or both. You got to kind of think of it as radiation, you know? The more of it you get exposed to, the more it affects you. I think that's actually a really good way to consider media consumption. Radiation. Okay. So this changes a fundamental part of the spawner. If we pull spawn point out of positioner, we need to build into all of the logic loop that I can't just talk to the positioner chain. I need to have a layer of abstraction. So should continue spawn loop. Should stop after one iteration. If I don't have so should continue loop becomes false after one iteration. So Skia, very clearly a cat person. And I could say, hey, look, there's a cat on the camera. I have 8 cameras dedicated to cats. So that's one part of the response. The other is, look at my ears. But hello, Skia, hello. Okay, we ask, should we continue the spawn loop? And we repeatedly ask that. If delta is 0 and we have no position chain, then the answer is no, because you've already asked us before. If no time has passed, then a lack of a spawner chain means do not. Yes, Nina. There are a lot of caveats to self-defense. This is assuming you're in the U.S. One of the principles of self-defense is retreat. If a person has fled and they cease to be an imminent danger to you, so they're not backing off and, carrying a ranged weapon kind of thing, then you are no longer under immediate threat of bodily harm. If you were to pursue them and attack them further, that's still assault. Self-defense ceased to exist. Now, that doesn't mean that there are going to be courts that don't ignore that entirely. But self-defense is nuanced. Potato. Action horror art. Can you define that? What? There are 2 descriptors on that, and I don't understand what the distinction between horror and action horror as far as art is. Is it just, a dynamic scene versus a fixed, like a POV kind of thing? Monsters fighting. I mean, at that point, I think it crosses into any sort of action scene. The horror becomes a. The horror becomes more content. As in, it becomes a choice of like nuance and what the figures are, but it then becomes an action scene. There are plenty of airsoft weapons, Nina, that can look realistic if you don't have all of the attachments on it. And even then, there are, setting aside discussions of behavior of law enforcement and their adherence to the actual law. Walking around with an exposed airsoft could still confuse or worry enough people that you have an actual weapon, and that is going to attract attention to you. You shall be hassled. It's kind of like the era, there was an era when toy guns were made to look very realistic. You know, lots of gloss black and chrome metal looking toy guns. And after some incidents, the next thing was that all of those toy guns had to have little orange dealies at the end of them, like on the muzzle, to try to show, oh, but this is a toy gun. And that wasn't enough. And that's why most Nerf stuff is like all neon colored. Not sure how to pronounce that. Is that like an acronym there, SLM? I speak English only. Okay. Okay. So we can't check delaying yet. So I'm just going to say there, SLM, you need to be careful now with your behavior. That you have received the only warning you're going to get on that kind of thing. Um, Horror is tricky in presentation. There are lots of different types as far as um, what kind of vibe you're trying to get. I am partial to psychological and eldritch horror, primarily because those are more mental as opposed to physical. If it's going to be just imagery, like without the context of what kind of scenario it is being presented as, then I like it to be surreal, like otherworldly. You know, like Jason or Freddy Krueger or any other form of like slasher creature. Usually not. I mean, it's just gore or violence at that point. Doesn't give me the horror vibe. Hey there, Ethan. Welcome. Okay. Okay. If position or chain. There is no positioner chain. Then, if delta is greater than 0, should continue. Oh. Should continue is equal to delta is greater than 0. Else, do that. Lewis, cats are doing well. You can see Ember is having a nice little nap there. She is cozy. Black and white art, just like heavy monochrome, can give you a lot. There is a great deal of detail that is conveyed by light and dark. So you can get a lot of results that way. Thanks for swinging through, Nina. So to give you an example, Potato, as far as horror is concerned, my current favorite is the recent Nicolas Cage version of The Color Out of Space. It is personally, at least in my opinion, the best adaptation of cosmic horror, of a Lovecraft story, but in particular cosmic horror. There are a few moments where you see a monstrous thing, but that is very much not the focus of the movie. The visuals that they have and the behavior of the characters is a bigger portion of that presentation. Even the environment is a big portion of it. I presume by analog, do you mean the media that it is created in? Or something else? Some form of the aesthetic, the tools? I'm not sure what you're getting at. Like, for example, do you mean practical effects in a movie? Do you mean... I know somebody referred to, like, found footage kind of things. I think I recognize Vita Carnis. Like, in general, there are gimmicks with media that I feel people give them more credit than they deserve intrinsically. So, like, found footage style. The look, here's a VHS recording of this stuff that's happening is not in and of itself good. The execution, if it aligns with what you're trying to do, can be good. Like, there was a period where found footage was all the rage, and many of them did it bad. The classic example of doing it bad is the shaky cam aiming at your feet. shaky cam makes sense. Video overlays for like a camcorder makes sense. But a person running with a camcorder aimed straight down at their shoes because the filmmaker thinks just having it looking through a lens makes it, convincing found footage. No, because why would you hold the camcorder that way? I'm willing to suspend disbelief that you're continuing to cling to it just out of fear-induced forgetfulness. Like, I'm just holding it tightly as I run. I'm not really thinking about holding it kind of gimmick. I never think, hey, this plastic doodad in my hand could be a wonderful bludgeon to keep the thing away from me. We can suspend disbelief for that, but sneaker cam just throws it right out the window. I'm told. I haven't actually watched it, but I think there was a series, there was a movie and then potentially some sequels called Paranormal, I think, where they set up security cameras in their house to try to find out what was going on, and the movie is presented in that fashion. That's kind of cool. I think that's a good usage of kind of in-world POV. If that's the kind of thing you mean, like a diegetic point of view, I think is what it would be called, then that makes sense. That works. In-world point of view can be interesting. There was an action movie called, I think it was Hardcore Henry, that did a good job of that. That was kind of fun, where everything was from the point of view of the lead, of the point of view character. So never that third person camera work, all like straight through their eyes. It was pretty cool. Okay, so we don't have a positioner chain, and we've already called it once, which means it would equal 0, so we should not continue. If we do have a positioner chain, then we defer to the positioner chain. So should continue gets invoked. Um, if positioner chain, then we do this. Else we do this. And again. All right. Ugh. It's the only place I have to do this inside the spawner, so it doesn't feel terrible, but... So we head into the loop once. Oh, wait. We have no position or chain. We're always going to do this. So that will update the time since last spawn. There's no position or chain. So we're always going to say okay. If delta is greater than 0, way too complicated. I really don't like this. Default, it's false. If then continue is equal to true. All right, thinking through this. So if I have no positioner chain, so Lovecraft mythos, Lovecraft and his associated pen pals mythos. Um, the concept is less about a person finding the knowledge goes mad, and more about experiencing something that is outside of your actual ability to comprehend it. So there are times when it's sloppy, where it's just big or scary, but most of the time that it's executed well in those books, in short stories, is that the person sees something that makes so little sense for their worldview that they now have some sort of fundamental terror. Alternately, it's that that has already happened and that the narrator is unreliable now. I think it's called The Music of Eric Zahn. It might be called something else, but the story is effectively a person gets lost in the streets and finds a dead-end alley, an alley that leads up to a series of places where you can't see, to a place where the overhanging buildings and the like block out the sky, and it ends with a house where they can hear somebody playing music, and it's beautifully talented violin music. And they go in to listen to the guy, and they're really sociable with each other, and everything's great, except at a particular time of night, the violinist gets really paranoid, gets really scared, and sends the guy away. Like, you have to leave right now. Go away. This happens a couple of times, and the guy gets curious and tries to, like, sneak in again after he has been told to leave. And he can hear this music that spirals into weird sounds and similar. And upon walking in and startling the guy, he can see him. He sees him just frantically playing, driving himself to exhaustion, sweating, that kind of thing. He walks in and startles the guy, and he stops playing, and that guy just gets sucked out into space through the window, the only place in that area that you would be able to see the sky. There are associations of what might be happening with the mythos, the entities involved, but it's more the general build up to that moment. Del Toro did a series called Cabinet of Curiosities, I think it was on Netflix, where they did a couple of Lovecraft stories, one of which was I can't remember the title now. I think it's like Pickman's Model or something like that, where the overall story is that there is an artist who draws these incredibly detailed, talented things, but they're really horrific. They are body horror, they are gruesome scenes, but the detail, the quality of the art is amazing. Super realistic. And there's both the community doesn't like it because it's grotesque, but the other artists around him recognize the talent, the quality of what's being produced. But the guy will never let them see him work. And inevitably, as with a lot of Lovecraft stories, the curious guy sneaks along to spy. And what he finds out is that Pickman is drawing from a model. The creatures and whatnot that he has been drawing are real things. There is something there. And in the original story, that's where we stop. The observer snaps because of that. And that's kind of the end of it. It's that is just too much for the observer to handle. Begin Lovecraft overly flowery, bloated text about how terrible it was. Del Toro drops the ball entirely, and instead of it just ending there, you have the point of view character steps in and burns the place down and drives the creature away, but he returns home only to find out that his family saw the model, the paintings, and they went insane, and his wife kills his kid in a gruesome fashion. And that's... No. That wasn't the point. That doesn't carry the story or the feeling at all. That's just more gore. Oh, okay. Okay, so we don't have a positioner chain. That means we only have a spawner. We need to have an amount of time having passed. If we did, we increment it. We check and see if our interval has passed. And if it has, we're ready to roll. If we don't have time, then it's still false. We don't need to do that. It's already false coming in here. So it only becomes true if we get all the way here. If we do have a positioner chain, then we jump through the hoops of asking the chain if we should continue. There are a lot of hoops involved in that because you can have things like delays and what have you. Okay. Should continue. If we have a positioner chain, we talk to the positioner chain. Otherwise, if we don't have a chain, we're going to get the spawn position. Check is ready if we're ready. If position or chain. Oh, this is... I don't like that at all. Oh, I may figure out a way around this later. Okay, if we have a position or chain, we ask it again, are you ready to spawn? Otherwise, it's false. If there's no chain, we will only trigger all of this once. And should continue, again, we'll say if there's no chain, and you've already asked us, like time needs to have passed, then we won't. We will return false. If not position or chain. Eat a taco? What kind of tacos do you like? I like Taco Bell tacos. I always have people, oh, you should try a real taco. You should try an authentic taco. I have. I don't like them. For me, it's like meat, cheese, sauce, crunchy shell. That's it. Lettuce if I have to. Lettuce is inoffensive, but lettuce is also just, it might as well be parsley. It's just, at most, it's a light extra crunch that's kind of watery. In general, it often turns into soggy fiber. Laura, I think you might have fallen behind on the stream. Okay, we don't need to assert that there's a position or chain. Potatoes. I like mashed potatoes. Potato. Baked potatoes can be okay. I mean, they're an inferior mashed potato. I just like mashed potatoes in general. I even like the kind of reconstituted powdered type. Uh, yeah. Okay. Initial direction. Okay. So we have some more here. Only do that if there's a position or chain. Now we have initial direction. Now, previously, if I just had a spawn point, there would be no initial direction. Like if I just had spawn on player, there would be no initial direction. Two is equal to vector 2, 0. If positioner chain, then initial direction is actually equal to that. And then we do that. All right, spawn points exist. Huzzah, and what have you. Okay, 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 okay. Then we go into our catalogs. So our patterns and modifiers. So we really only have one positioner, and now with spawn points we have 3. Oop. 2. Oh, gotta reload the project. Just calm down a little, potato. Calm down a little. Dial it back. And 3. Okay. Okay. Again. Okay, spawn points exist in a catalog. I don't necessarily need it to exist in a catalog, but they might as well. Spawn. No, they still have a catalog name. Good. Good. Now we need an idea of this is true, Lore. This is true. The I've just never been never been fond of putting lettuce on a sandwich. If it's fresh and it's placed carefully so that it doesn't get all soggy and the like, then it adds a bit of a crunch, you know? But if it's going to start to wilt almost immediately because of the heat and positioning of it, and if the it already has a crunch to it, then what's the point? Lettuce isn't even very fibrous. I mean, and it usually doesn't have much by way of taste. Okay, so now we need the idea of the player's inventory, where that's where we're going to move the spawners to. We're also going to need to set up we then need a way to tell the player area that the game areas, what the game area's zones are. So when it's creating spawners, it can have that set up. That is, when the player thinking, when we create a new weapon on the player, that we can tell the inventory, essentially, you've got a new weapon object, and it generates it. Which means the player inventory needs to know where the weapon zone is. Yeah. Okay, so now we need a new global thing. Player inventory. Right here. Are definitely going to need to be careful with these auto loads. Oh. Okay. Okay. What do we do? I think we pause for now is what we do. Oh, we do need to think on this a little further. I do want to do some more programming streams. I'd like to start sooner tomorrow. We'll see if that happens. All right, so what we did is we got the catalog infrastructure set up. We made it so that entities have subclasses that we can use if we need to, where there's a difference between enemies and weapons. They still have all of the basic logic of an entity, so they still do the movement chain, all of that kind of stuff. But other objects can see them as a specific class, which will be useful for the catalog. You know, give me random weapon. Then we went through and we split spawn points out of the idea of positioners. That makes it so that, one, we don't have to jump through extra hoops with the positioners as far as getting spawn positions. We don't have a weird split logic in the chain. It also means we can have things that are just spawning without positioner logic. As in, they spawn wherever they spawn, and they spawn on a fixed interval. I don't intrinsically need to have like burst or anything like that. That will actually be useful for the weapons, because then they won't intrinsically have positioner objects. I think eventually what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that the movement chain will probably have an intrinsic part to it, as in like what it targets and how it initially moves, but then all of the subsequent stuff will be handled by the power-ups. We'll see. We're just about there, though. The player inventory global is where we'll be working next. Okay. So next stream is going to be tomorrow. We're going to be continuing our coding. We will start by 4 p.m. U.S. Central. Okay, well, I hope everybody had a good time watching tonight. We did make some progress. If you like what you saw and would like to see more, remember to like, comment, subscribe, follow, whatever it is for the platform you're viewing through. It will help those platforms serve you up stuff that you like in the future, and potentially you'll see more of my streams. In any event, I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.